One thing that I've talked about in the past, and I didn't do this well early on, but I remember a couple times as a staff person going to my boss. I wasn't overwhelmed necessarily, but I wanted to make sure that my priorities were the same as my supervisors. So I kind of went, hey, I just want to talk for a few minutes about this. These are my priorities: one, two, three, four, five. What do you think of my list? And a couple things happened that I'll never forget. One time he went, oh, I'm sorry, that number two there, we stopped working on that about 6 weeks ago, and we should have told you that. And I remember being so frustrated by that because I've been spending 10 hours a week working on number two. Or what was more likely to happen is they would say, well, really my priorities are three, five, four, two, one. And that little discussion for me as a staff level person was very helpful because now we were on the same page. And again, whether the boss wasn't being a jerk at all, he was just kind of busy and he thought my priorities were the same as his. So that discussion from a staff level person is really important. And I know there's some people out there that go, well, you don't know my boss. Like I can't go to my boss and say, I just want to check my priorities. Or maybe the worst thing would be to go to your boss and say, I have too much on my plate. So what's your reaction to that?
No, that's a great point, because that's something kind of what you were talking about that you did do with your previous, or, in Caterpillar with your bosses. What I wish I had done with some of my previous employers, because I definitely didn't take that initiative as the employee, because as a young person trying to make an impact, trying to, impress my leadership, I wanted to look like I could do it all. And so there was nothing about, the stress or the misaligned expectations or any of that rang a bell with me that said, hey, maybe you should have a conversation that make sure you're on the same page. Instead, I would just take it on and be like, well, I'll try to fit that in. I'll try to do this. And I had so many things, kind of like you just talked about, that I would finish a project or complete a task, and I would feel so proud that I got this done because I knew the time that I invested in it. But by the time I turned it over, it was not well received, not because they weren't grateful, but because it was not their top priority anymore. And so it was just kind of disheartening to me to be like, well, I just, I've spent all kinds of time on that. I would have loved to know that you really didn't care to see that this week, and I would have eased off and not worked as many hours and got it to you later this month. So that's something I wish I had done, instead of just taking it on and trying to kind of prove my worth. Because looking at it now with a few more years of maturity and being in leadership positions myself over the years, it does kind of seem silly, because when I look back on it, if I'm a leader of someone else and they came to me and said, hey, I'm feeling overburdened with this, or I really need your input on which one of these to do first because I can't get it all done this week. Like, I wouldn't, if they're a star employee, my first impression is, well, let me help you. What can I do to remove a roadblock or help you get something done? Not, oh my gosh, like, you can't do that. Like, I must have hired the wrong person. But when you are that staff level person, it's hard to, see that playing out well in your head, because you just assume like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do, is everything my boss asked me to. And so I do think this is all a two-way street, but that communication can come from either way. And in my case, I wish I'd initiated that.